Welcome back, Religion Online. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. Deacon McCormick is home resting after not feeling well all night, and we wish him a speedy recovery. He's going to try to call in later on. It is a great honor to go to our conference line now and speak with a good friend, Dr. M. Zuhdi Jasser, president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Good morning, Dr. Jasser.
Good morning, Rabbi. It's great to be with you.
I see here testimony that you gave before a subcommittee on Africa, global health, global human rights, and international organizations. And a substantial part of your testimony related to anti-Semitism. I thought to myself, only a Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, as a proud Muslim, can stand there and give a meaningful presentation about anti-Semitism, because you're also one who stands, for the rights of all people. In it, you talk about the extent, the pervasive extent of anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews in a number of Muslim countries. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, kudos to Chairman Smith of the committee to focus on anti-Semitism, because it has always been such a canary in the coal mine for other religious freedoms, and ultimately where you find anti-Semitism, you end up fighting hate of all kinds and the destruction of democracy and democratic principles. And what I testified to was the fact that if you look in Muslim-majority countries and communities, ultimately anti-Semitism has long led the way, sadly, of the deterioration of those communities into autocracies and theocracies. And if you look at simply the Pew polls back from 2006, where they looked at unfavorable attitudes towards Jews in Muslim-majority countries, whether it's Lebanon or Jordan, it was up to 99%, 95% unfavorable attitudes. And it wasn't only among Muslims. In those countries, you found it among the whole society, where it had become a pandemic. And if you look in Europe, it also, Muslim communities, for example, in Britain, had 44% unfavorable attitude towards Jews, while the non-Muslim community was 7%. And the reason for that has to do with the media and the propaganda that Islamists put into Muslim communities in Europe, which Muslims, they are not watching, Sky News and CNN and Western media. They're watching their own media. And ultimately, this is the problem. And if we're going to face it, these communities, as we see now in Egypt, end up having the Brotherhood run them or Iranian theocracy run them. So we could have picked up on this a long time ago had the world not turned a blind ear, or deaf ear, to anti-Semitism and what it foretold for the future.
It goes even further than over there, even over here. How many times do you and I see these so-called dialogue groups, people sitting and talking to each other? They don't dare, for some reason, talk about anti-Semitism. And if anybody would even suggest the anti-Jewish attitude, they'll say, well, no, that's not for us. That's political or that's Islamophobic, but you cannot get a frank discussion on this subject, even here, where you have, all the media exposure. But I've attended some of these dialogue sessions, and it's the same old stuff. Let's talk about everything but the real issues.
And the interesting thing and the sad thing is that, they can pick out anti-Semitism where somebody says something just glaringly egregious. But when I met with the Brotherhood, we just came back on a trip to Saudi Arabia and Egypt on behalf of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and we had days full with meeting some of these new leaders of the Brotherhood. And I can tell you, it was something you could pick up 100 miles away in just a meeting. They would pretend, and when we confronted them about Morsi's statement 2 years ago where he talked about Muslims being necessarily having to raise their kids to hate Jews and use the old crazy pejorative of apes and pigs, they found some mechanism of explaining it by some contextual matter, and then they also talked about the Jewish community in a collective, the Jews, or they said there are things that I pick up on, and most people should pick up on, but yet Many in this interfaith work, like you said, don't. They ignore it, and it will only come back to hurt them, because if they think the Jewish community is a community they can ignore, these types of attitudes will destroy and rip apart society. And as we see on the day of my testimony this week, the president of Turkey made a statement. The new anti-Semitism, Rabbi, as you know, is about directing it towards Israel. And the new anti-Semitism, he said the day of our testimony, just happened to be, talked about Israel and saying that Zionism was a crime against humanity. And, yes, there was some outcry, but still, the world has been silent in the past 3 days from this so-called new Muslim democracy, which many of us have been saying has been turning towards radical Islamism clearly since this new president and government took over now for almost 10 years, is really more Islamist. And I think the anti-Semitism, they say, is one of the clearest signs of that.
You're right in terms of even the language used to express condemnation. You don't get the word condemn. The new Secretary of State Kerry was in the region, was there, and he said, well, the Prime Minister's statement is objectionable. That's a pretty mild kind of criticism of harsh anti-Semitism.
And it's sad, because it tells me not only that they don't have the courage because they're worried about breaking security, alliances and things, but they really don't get it. They don't understand. One of my main messages, the members of Congress on Wednesday said, well, what can we do? What are some things we can do? I said, two things. Disengage from Islamists and engage with the liberals, the reformists, those on the ground. Because if you look right now, at the end of the day, you had some alliance formed with the Islamists and some secularists that did not want the old Mubarak regime coming back. The bridge of that communication was anti-Semitism, because a lot of these communities had become glaringly anti-Semitic when you had secular dictators, but they used that to radicalize their entire nation. And if our Secretary of State can't see that and speak out against it and see that it may cause some short-term animosity, but in the long term, you had the president of Malaysia 5 years ago, Mahathir, basically talking about conspiracy theories of the Jews that, again, were just condemned for a few days, and the world went on. And at the end of the day, we could have seen, had we addressed it 5-6 years ago when Mahathir made those, I think, beyond offensive statements about Jews, we would possibly be working with the right people now rather than friends with the Brotherhood and the Islamists that are, I think, destroying Muslim nations right now.
So where are we going here? You see Iraq. After all of the bloodshed there and so much American blood being spilled there, Iraq leaning closer to Iran than ever before. You see Argentina, where there was a bombing of a Jewish center some years ago. Now, and Iran was clearly implicated in that bombing. Now Argentina is forming a truth commission. I don't know if you saw this. Who's on the truth commission? Argentina has selected Iran to designate people to sit on the truth commission. So Argentina now leaning towards Iran. It seems to me this Islamist kind of attraction is taking hold in a number of places today.
Well, nature abhors a vacuum. And these dictators for generations destroyed the communities and did so by sowing sectarian divisions. And one of the primary mechanisms by beginning it was unifying their community with hatred of the West, and especially starting with anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews in Israel. And right now, as they begin to transform out of secular dictatorship, they're all headed towards theocratic dictatorship, no different than Iran did, unless we begin to have a more forward, more aggressive foreign policy that looks at bonding and engaging and saying that we're going to defend. Right now, Rabbi, there are newspaper cartoons in Egypt that show the picture of Secretary Kerry as an honorary member of the Brotherhood. all over the street.
Wow.
And it's because they're seeing us, again, taking the shortcut and working with the theocrats or whoever's the strong horse of the day, and not really helping the people on the ground. And if we don't, and again, this is not us getting involved militarily, it's simply a war of ideas that's happening that we need. Just like in the Cold War, we took a strong stance against global communism, and it wasn't always the easy route to do. And unless we take a strong stance against global Islamism or political Islam and call out, name and shame when they say things that are anti-Semitic, anti-Western, conspiracy theories, we are going to allow the ascendancy of a greater threat than we've ever seen before.
Let me just conclude with the statement you made, which just shows you the kind of person that you are. It is the Jewish faith group that is being attacked and demonized, and I, as a devout American Muslim, have dedicated my life to countering the Islamist demagogues and their ideas from within our faith community that target Jews. I only wish we had more like you to stand up and take such a courageous position. We'd be in a much better place today.
Well, God bless you, Rabbi,
you
and
too.
I appreciate the opportunity. I hope people really begin, and I told the members of Congress, if I tried to speak to the Homeland Security Committee about the importance of Islamism, and people complained that we were attacking Muslims, etc. I said, here you have a whole faith community of the Jewish community being attacked. Islamism is not a faith. It's a political ideology that utilizes hate of other faiths to ascend. And if maybe this is the mechanism that America will come to understand, that we are fighting a political ideology that wraps itself in my faith.
By the way, I want to say it's not just you who stand up, but we see others who don't stand up. In my own faith community, I see Jews who won't stand up, and they just look the other way. They're just afraid to say anything. Political party also becomes, paramount rather than a principled position. And you won't get them to stand with you. I remember how you were attacked when you took, the position that this Islamist spirit is seeking to destroy us. You were attacked by your own, but you were attacked by people of other faiths. It's just very unfortunate that in today's world, you have to be courageous in order to say that which needs to be said.
Well, thank you. And when I'm attacked, they call me an agent of Israel or a Zionist. Yeah. I talked about the websites that have attacked me, and it's amazing how that becomes the tool when left unaddressed by our nation. All
right. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Take care.